Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben, your go-to podcast for all things green and growing. I'm Ben, your allotment guide, and here to help you cultivate your garden and your passion for plants. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Each episode will dig into tips, tricks and techniques to make your garden and allotment thrive. From planting, sowing and growing, we will share all the tips and advice. We will also have regular episodes talking about what we have been up to on the allotment. So sit back, grab a brew and enjoy today's episode. Hey everyone and welcome back to Gardening with Ben. I hope you're enjoying that the podcasts are now back again. Like I said, I do apologise that we've had a small little break in between recording these episodes, but yeah, we're back now that we're settled into our new place. So as I mentioned in yesterday's podcast, today's podcast we're going to be talking about all the things that you can plant in December, whether it be vegetables, whether it be fruit or whether it be flowers. And I know a lot of the times people like to write down these little tips and advice. So if you've not got a notepad, make sure you keep some notes on what you can plant this month. Let me know if you're going to be trying any of them. I always love to hear back from you all. You can anytime message me on Instagram and I will always try and get back to you. So let's start off talking about what we can grow in the vegetable garden in December. Can't believe it's December already. This year's gone absolutely so fast, but I'm happy that it's gone fast because it's been an awful year for growing. So fingers crossed next year is going to be a much better one and hopefully we get some fantastic produce. So what can you sow in the vegetable garden this month? Well, last couple of months ago, we planted all our bulbs for our onions, but now we need to start thinking about sowing those onion seeds. Yes, sowing onion seeds. Now, I did a little experiment quite a few years ago on growing onions from seed and growing the sets as well, which are the small little bulb ones. And actually, the seed ones did a lot better than the set variety. So I may try starting some of these off myself because I'd love to try and get some nice big onions again. And if we start them off now, they'll get nice and big in time for June, July time when we harvest them. So the variety of onion seeds that you need to start sowing at this time of month, ready for sowing, planting out in March, April time, or the Alicia Craig variety of onion seeds. So if you're wanting to sow onion seeds this month, you can sow Alicia Craig. Now you can either start them now or start them in January, but obviously starting them now, you'll get a head start and hopefully get some massive onions for next year. So let's get started with some onions, everyone. I'll have to start some off myself and then you can follow along and see how well my onions get on this year. Next up is lettuce. Now, if you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse, you can continue growing lettuce throughout the winter months. You can't grow it outside, it's too cold, but if you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse, especially a heated greenhouse, you can carry on growing lettuce throughout the winter months. Now, the variety of lettuce that you need to grow this month is Winter Gem or Arctic King. But like I said, it needs to be a nice warm greenhouse. So if you wanted to grow lettuce throughout the winter months, sow some Winter Gem or Arctic King lettuce. Next up is broad beans. Now don't do what I did. Well, you can do what I did, but I tend to not sow broad beans into the soil straight outside because squirrels will get them, rats will get them, mice will get them. Anything will get them because there's not much growing around at this time of year. So they're very vulnerable to wildlife coming along and eating them. So I thought I'd start mine off in seed trays. However, the squirrels got into my shed and they ate the lot of them. So you can never win. But however, I've got a little plan to get some growing where no wildlife can get any of them. So stay tuned for that video because it's quite a good little tip, I'll tell you that. But if you wanted to grow some broad beans this month is the month to grow Aquadulus Claudia. Aquadulus Claudia. broad beans. Now, obviously, if you're sowing them now, they'll be ready to harvest before the black fly even appear. So if you don't like the black fly all over them, now is the perfect time to be picking those, sowing those broad beans. Now, obviously, you can still sow them in March, but they'll be ready to harvest when the black fly are around. So it's up to you. You can obviously try and grow both of them, but now is the time to grow Aquadulus Claudia broad beans. So next on is to fruit. What fruit can we plant during the winter months? Well, obviously, you can actually plant most fruit trees at this time of year. Now is the perfect time to be planting those fruit trees, as it's wetter, it's damper, and the roots take on the fruit trees. The fruit trees are dormant mainly at this time of year. They won't be growing the fruit. They'll be concentrating on growing the branches and growing the roots at this time of year. Hence why it's the best time of year to plant your fruit trees. And obviously, if you're planting them in summertime, they'll be concentrating on producing the fruit. That's when they usually produce the fruit, and obviously they'll need watering more. That's why we plant our fruit trees during the winter months. So any fruit trees you can plant during December. You can obviously plant your blueberries as well at this time of year. If you're planting blueberries, make sure you plant them in ericaceous soil, which is acid soil, to help them flourish. They prefer ericaceous to normal soil. Next up is raspberries. You can plant your raspberries this time of month, whether it be summer fruiting raspberries or autumn fruiting raspberries, whichever variety you want. Now is the perfect time to be sowing them. Planting them, not sowing them. Planting raspberries. Next up is strawberry plants. Now, you know I absolutely love strawberries. Now, obviously you can plant strawberries at this time of year. The leaves will die off at this time of year because it is cold and the frost will get them, but the plants won't die as they can withstand cold weather. And make sure they're planted out, keep them well watered, and you should, in theory, be getting some strawberries on them next year if you plant them now. So if you're wanting strawberries, ask around because they won't have them in garden centres. Friends, family who've got cuttings off over strawberry plants, ask around, see if anyone's got any that you can plant at this time of year. Rhubarb. Now, if you wanted to start some rhubarb off, now is the time to plant your rhubarb crowns, as the dormant and the wet conditions in December help the crowns to establish strong roots. However, don't try and harvest them in the first year. You need to let them settle in, establish the crown in the ground, and then you harvest it on the second year. Don't be tempted to harvest it in the first year, even if there's rhubarb on it. Just let it grow and pick it the year after. And obviously you can plant your gooseberries as well at this time of year. So any fruit trees and bushes is the perfect time to plant them during December month. Next up is flowers. Now, what flowers can we plant in December? You might think it's too cold to be planting flowers, but now is the perfect time to be growing geraniums. Now, if you're wanting some geraniums to flower next year in summer, now is the time to be sowing geranium seeds indoors. Place them in a warm, sunny windowsill, and they'll be ready to bloom for an extended period once spring arrives. By sowing them early, you can enjoy a beautiful geranium for longer in your garden and containers. Now, I've grown geraniums from seeds, and they are actually really easy to grow, and obviously saves you a lot of money because geranium plants are quite expensive. I've dug up all my geranium plants from last year, and I've put them inside my shed so that the frost doesn't get them in the snow, and hopefully I can plant them out again next year. So you can actually keep them going year after year if you look after them. You can plant some spring bulbs still at this time of year. In garden centres, you often see them selling them off at this time of year. You can plant your tulips, you can plant your daffodils, you can plant your snowdrops, hyacinths. You've still plenty of times to be planting your spring flowers. I've known people plant them in January and they still manage to get some blooms on them. So if you see any on offer, buy them and plant them, and it'll encourage the bees when they wake up from hibernation to come around and help with pollination. Next up are hellebores. Known as the Christmas rose, hellebores are a winter garden essential. These hardy perennials thrive in cool temperature and can be planted in December to bring delicate blooms to your garden through late winter and early spring. Their elegant flowers in shades of white, pink, and purple add a soft, enchanting touch to any winter landscape. So if you want to add some colour to your garden, add some hellebores. As well as that, you can also plant your cyclamen. With the dainty flowers and attractive foliage, cyclamen make a wonderful addition to a winter garden. They thrive in the cool temperatures and can be planted in sheltered, outdoor spaces or kept indoors as a houseplant. Cyclamen blooms in shades of pink, red and white and will add a charming touch to your garden throughout winter. If you wanted to add some other winter colour, you can obviously plant winter pansies and you can also plant your primroses at this time of year. So there's still plenty of flowers that you can plant during this month to add lots of colour to your garden, because there's not much colour around in your garden at this time of year. So hopefully those will give you some ideas on what plants you can plant in the garden. So if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you do get in touch and let me know what you're going to be planting this month. I'm definitely going to be planting some onion seeds, so make sure you stay tuned for that YouTube video. And if you want to follow along, feel free to follow along while I plant mine, and let's see who does the best onions. I know it probably won't be me. I'm very honest. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode today, and I hope you've got some useful information from it. Tomorrow's episode, we'll be talking about all the jobs which need to be done in the garden and allotment this month to keep your gardens looking absolutely fantastic and encouraging them for next year. So until next time, everyone, remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep gardening with Ben, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Gardening with Ben. I hope you have found some useful tips and inspiration for your own gardening and allotment journey. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love for you to leave a review and share the podcast with fellow gardening enthusiasts. Your support helps us grow this community and continue bringing you great content. You can also follow us on social media on every platform called Gardening with Ben for daily gardening tips and updates. Happy gardening, and until next time, remember, keep smiling, keep shining, and keep gardening with Ben.